Hey, all, welcome to Now We're Talking with Doug Pagitt. My conversation today is with Bart Campolo, humanist. He's also a friend of mine, but I'm going to be starting an installment of weekly conversations with people from different backgrounds, traditions, ways of approaching the world. And one of those is going to be with friends of mine and acquaintances I know who are humanists. So if you're interested in that conversation, tune in. Most likely it's going to be Fridays, but we'll keep you up to date. Check the podcast feed for the humanist selection. Bart and I have known each other for a long time. We jumped right in to the conversation. I was having some technical difficulties, so we started a little bit late, but we jumped right in with a live stream conversation that we were having, and I think you'll like it. It sort of tells you about our relationship and friendship and how it's gone over the years. So here it is, my conversation with humanist and good friend and all-around great guy, Bart Campolo. Hey, if you appreciate these conversations and other ones like it, head over to DougPagitt.com, become a patron, chip in a little bit. It helps, really does. Pays for all this. And I'd love to have your patron edge. All right, here we go. Conversation with Bart. You're not into God.
I'm into loving people. Yeah, making the world a better place. That's what I'm into.
Oh, is that right? How's that going? Yeah. And Donald Trump's the 45th president. All right. So here we go. We're just gonna go.
Wait, you're gonna talk to the secular guy about Donald Trump when it was your people elected him?
Yes, sirree, Bob. I am gonna talk to the secular guy about Donald Trump.
He's your president, man. He's an evangelical. He's an evangelically supported. You are his base.
Yeah. So that's Bart Campolo. If you've joined us here live on Facebook, and I'm Doug Pagitt. Bart Campolo, as it says up on the banner, humanist. And we're just chatting here for a second while I have to do the regular updates that I do to the settings of this video so that I can share it broadly with the world, and you all can share it as well. And Bart could do the same to share it around the internet. We're just talking about, he was saying that he's a humanist who tries to make the world better. And I said, hey, how's that going, making the world better? And then I suggested, Donald Trump is the president. And then, in a beautiful retort, Bart said,
it wasn't my people that got him elected.
That's on you, my friend. Yeah. All right. So, is that really the case, do you think? I mean, I know that there's some demographics.
No, I'm a white person, and so it was my people that got him elected.
I was going to say, I mean, if we want to take the demographic slice, we could say Bart Campolo is upper middle-aged straight white male living in
all my fault.
Ohio.
I was in California when it happened.
At the time? Okay, all right. Well, you're his base now. You're his base. All right, so those who are just joining us, Bart, I don't know if you remember that we've been friends for a very long time.
I would be a bad friend if I didn't remember that we'd been friends for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it goes all the way back to, I don't know if you'll remember this, to 1987.
Wow.
I was a youth pastor at a church in the Twin Cities here called Wooddale Church. And you, at the time, were working at Park Avenue United Methodist Church.
I was a youth pastor there.
And you were coordinating the Soul Liberation Festival. You remember any of this at all?
Totally. Absolutely.
Back? And my job as a summer intern at that church was to find projects for high school kids to do. So we brought high school kids down and were a team that worked for that week, helping to make the festival happen by sleeping outside on the stage area
to
at
protect
34th Avenue and Park Street. 34th Street and Park Avenue in Minneapolis to protect the equipment all night long. We had to sleep outside like overnight guard. So anyway, I don't know. That was like one brief interaction. But back then, you were a famous person in my mind. I mean, you're still a famous person in my mind, but your fame goes for me all the way back to the middle 1980s. How about that?
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I remember. Like, we've been friends a long time. And most of the time that we were friends, I was kind of like a progressive evangelical Christian guy who would give talks places, and we would show up at conferences and, do stuff together. And I'm guessing that when we were young guys in Minneapolis then, we were both moving.
Right.
Like I would guess if I took a snapshot of you and your theology and your worldview and your stuff then, it would be different than it is now.
Yeah, very much.
And so mine was changing too. Mine just went all the way. Like I just, mine just,
you're not a quitter. You're not a quitter is what you're suggesting.
Until I was all the way out of Christianity.
I remember some of our you had a lot going on then. And I remember at the time thinking Bart is on to something. This is back in 1987. So I'd been Christian for 4 years. Like I got into Christianity as a high school kid, didn't know anything. I was 4 years into being in the Christian world. This intern running this program for this summer program with these high school kids that I loved, and it was great. And I remember thinking, Bart, you would say things in sort of that Bart Campolo way, like you're walking everywhere and talking really fast and really loud and kind of moving around, doing the thing.
Often, as my kids say, often wrong, never in doubt.
Yeah, that attitude, yes. But you would make these comments at times just about like what we're up to or what this particular summer program was. And I remember thinking, that guy is tapping into something, and he's not afraid to kind of call bullshit on the circumstance and situation that he sees. Now, then it was, some, I don't know, whatever it was going on. I don't even remember. But there was a tone that was an unafraid kind of attitude about how you thought the world should be. And so I've wondered, now that you've fallen from the faithful, if you consider if that was a real thing for you all along. Like, was that a family kind of trait that you had, or was there something else that drove it? And or maybe I'm misreading it. Maybe you didn't see yourself as sort of pushing the boundaries like that.
It's interesting. I mean, when I think about it, because my dad, who and who's is kind of this super prominent evangelical Christian speaker, leader, writer guy.
Yeah.
My dad is well known as like people would always say, oh, he's bold. He's, he really lays it out there and stuff like that. I always saw my dad as very careful.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
I think he's safely radical.
Yes.
And he picks his issues carefully. And much of that I would ascribe to, like, it really matters to him. He I don't want to call him a people pleaser, but like, he cares what people think. He cares about people, and it's not all bad.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is I would sort of say that my dad, like many great men, like people that make a big difference in the world, there's always kind of at the root some kind of fundamental insecurity, some kind of need to prove themselves to somebody. And so, if somebody said to me, like, do you think of your dad as kind of like at the core insecure? I would say, like, yeah. And so does he. Like, this would, like, if he was listening, he wouldn't go like, I can't believe Bart's saying that. Like, he would say that. The weird thing about my dad is that unlike most people who have some basic insecurities and a constant need for validation, wanting and literally willing to like go anywhere to get a standing ovation, and you think like, but he's like the best speaker ever. I go like, he needs to be the best speaker ever, because he really feeds off that stuff. The weird thing about him is most people I know like that raise their kids to be insecure.
Yeah.
They just transmit that same insecurity on to their kids. Like that same sense of you always have to prove yourself. My dad was amazing at sort of convincing me that I was wonderful no matter what.
Really?
There was no sense in which I had to prove myself to him, or like I had to get good grades, or I had to do that. Like if I came home, the joke I always have is if I came home with an F on a test, my dad would look at it and go like, I don't know what's the matter with those teachers at the school that they don't know how to teach a genius like you. He just projected to me like, you're fine. In every situation you belong. In every situation your opinion is valuable. Like, and so, I think that quote unquote, if somebody would say like, you seem fearless, I mean, I just always felt like secure. Huh. And so I felt like I could say what I thought, and I didn't have to worry that much about, well, what will other people think? I was like, if other people didn't like me, I always thought like, gosh, they just don't, I wonder what's wrong with them. They must be having a bad day.
Yeah. Right.
Hey. Whereas my wife, would say like, if somebody on the other side of the street is having, falls down and curses, she would be like, what did I do?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Right. She's more more connected to another person's experiences having something to do with her.
Yeah, in a negative way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, and so, so I think that quality, I mean, and it's funny because sometimes people say, gee, it was courageous of you when you couldn't believe in God anymore, that you actually said that.
Yeah.
That you didn't just fake it to your grave like so many people do. And I mean, I know how many, like, I'm aware of how many prominent Christian leaders are faking it because a lot of them talk to me in private. And so they're saying like, wow, it's really courageous you come out. Like, honestly, there was no courage involved at all. Mm-hmm. It never occurred to me not to say what I was really thinking. Mm-hmm. It would have been, it's just
interesting. Yeah. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about is if you have experienced from people that when you made a change in your, I mean, I don't know how you want to describe it. You didn't only make a change in your beliefs. You've made a much larger adjustment in sort of your way of life and what you're doing and how you're doing it in the world and all those things.
I mean, technically speaking, I didn't make a change in my beliefs.
Oh.
My beliefs. Technically speaking, my beliefs changed. Like we don't choose what we believe.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you. Okay.
Yeah. Right. It's not like I woke up one day and thought like, I'm bored with this Christianity thing. I'd like to be a secular humanist. Like, no,
because there are people watching right now who they woke up today and they said, not I'm bored with this belief. They woke up and said, it's there again, this haunting belief that I wish would go away. I wonder if I could become a humanist. And I'm not saying that lightly at all. People really do think if I could shed this God complex that I have, this faith complex, this faith problem, I would do that in a minute. What do I need to do? And I'm sure you meet people and they listen to your podcast and follow you around. And they're kind of wanting to know, can you help me let go of this belief in God that I don't want anymore?
And like the truth is, I only talk about not believing in God with people who come to me that way. Like if somebody is being haunted by, being persecuted by the God they believe in, and they want to escape, I'm there to help. But if somebody's thriving and happy in their faith, if believing in God is working for them, I've got I have no interest in debunking Christianity or any other religion.
So in this,
but to answer your question, when I do meet lots of people, I meet a lot of gay people, who believe in a God who doesn't like gay people,
right?
And it would actually, since they're going to be gay, it would be convenient if they sort of shed that God delusion.
Yeah. So your comment earlier that sent me off on that little tangent was we don't pick our beliefs the way that we pick our outfits or anything else. And some neuroscientists might even say you're not actually even picking your outfits. There's a whole lot of factors that are going in that make it feel to you like that's the case. But it's certainly true that a person doesn't just sit around and decide, I think I'm going to believe this. I've been saying that for years to people. And I will tell you, Christian people, especially, and I'm sure others, even non-believers in religious systems, I think would say this, like, no. I've picked, I'm responsible. I've talked to a lot of atheists and humanists who are very proud of the fact that they don't believe in God, right? And a lot of religious people who are very proud of the fact that they do, and they think they are responsible for their belief. So when I say, or as they would hear you saying, look, that's just not how belief works. That, it visits you, it haunts you, it shows up. You're coming to grips with it much more than owning it. It's more like having a child in your life than it is having an outfit on.
I will tell you this, like one of the things that I think sometimes what happens is that you can't change your mind willy-nilly. Like if I put a gun to your head and said, like, I'm going to kill you if you don't accept Islam, and then put you on a lie detector, you would fail.
Yeah.
Right. Like no matter how motivated you were, like you don't just willy-nilly pick what you believe. Having said that, you can put yourself in a position where you might be exposed to evidence, or you might be exposed to a social context that will change your beliefs. The Stanford prison experiment, where they took these college students, and some of them they made guards, and some of them they made prisoners, and the psyche and the sense of self-worth and the worldview of these people shifted within days because the context that they were in, the way they were being treated, the way they were living their lives. And so you go like, well, wait a second. Are you saying that we are like our minds, our thinking are shaped by our environments and by the people around us and by the stuff we're reading? I go like, absolutely. So if you want to stay a Christian, you would do well to stay away from like studying neuroscience. You would do well to stay away from studying a lot of things like astrophysics. Like if you want to be a creationist, you would do well to stay away from studying Darwin. Like, and so, and a lot of people, a lot of the Christian college stuff that I experienced was like people sending their children to college precisely to protect them from being exposed to ideas that they thought would undermine their beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, what you're getting at, I would suggest that perhaps there's a kind of Christian who's not afraid of knowledge, information, and understanding. So I don't know that that's what you're saying. What you're saying, but I do think for any deeply held belief that someone holds in a way that is they're nervous about, or that they lack a confidence in, or that they think is made of something fragile, regardless of where they would come from, they would.
And those Christians you talked about, that aren't afraid of new ideas and evidence and stuff like that, like they're also not afraid of having their faith change.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because there's nobody that gets exposed to that stuff that doesn't end up modifying their understanding of God or modifying their understanding of how the world works. Like, and so, the people, the Christians or the believers that are willing to kind of say like, bring it on. Yeah. Are at the same time sort of saying, I'm confident that I'll continue to believe in God, but I'm not, but if they said like, and there's nothing that will change my mind, I go like, well, they're naive. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in a family where I think, I don't know that my dad would have been a category person, but I think he would have been in the category of a humanist. He certainly was he actually might have been in the anti-religious category, right? So he was the type that was concerned about the negative influences of religion. The Christopher Hitchens sort of category, right? Something that I appreciate very deeply, because I'm also very concerned about the power of religion, right? Even though I'm an insider in it, I'm really concerned about it. And when I went to a Christian college, I went to Bethel College, which was a private liberal arts Christian college. He was worried that I would run into, that I would become indoctrinated into things that were not going to be helpful for me.
Sure.
And I met other people who grew up in families like mine who were also concerned that their parents were concerned that they would be indoctrinated. So what I'm getting at is it seems as if there are people on both sides of a belief system who would say, be careful hanging around those ideas. They might not treat you well. So the religious person would say,
and they're both right.
Yeah, right. Because that's what I'm getting at. Because it's actually a thing, isn't it? Like it actually works. The pathway that I've seen for people entering into non-belief in religion, maybe they become a humanist or something, is normally that someone in their life, most likely a spouse or life partner, has made that turn already. That's the person that brings them down the path to starting to realize maybe my beliefs in religion and God and faith and spirituality don't need to be the way that I thought they were. That close proximity seems to carry a lot of power.
I mean, it does. I mean, the truth is, though, if you're me, I hear deconversion stories every day.
Yeah.
And they do fall into certain categories, but there are a lot of different ways in which somebody's faith, there's a lot of different things that push that first domino over.
Oh yeah. Okay.
There are a lot of different experiences. Sometimes it's an experience of inexplicable tragedy that you go like, there's no way a loving God has any interest in this 4-year-old dying of brain cancer.
Yeah.
And you go like, well, and they have a theological workaround when it's somebody else's 4-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it's theirs, all of a sudden they go, you know what? My ability to believe in a God who actually does anything significant in the world is gone. And so, that's not a spouse or, that's not a conversation that they have with somebody. It's not a book that they read. It's an experience that they have.
Yeah.
But then I know other people that pick up a book and thinking, I've known a lot of people that picked up a book, like thinking that like they were doing research, on the other side, and then found themselves going like, oh my gosh, and we always had those wonderful stories of like, there was that journalist, I forget who he was, who picked up the Bible to debunk it and read it and saw that it had to be true. And he became a Christian, praise the Lord, and like, people have, and that's a legitimate experience too. Mm-hmm. That sometimes, depending on where you come at it, a book can take you into faith or a book can take you out.
So you referred to it as deconversion. I mean, I
that's it. Yeah, and that's a very imperfect term.
I see what you're getting at. But I would imagine for you, and this is what I'd love to hear from you. I would imagine that your movement, your personal move, the Bart Campolo as a human being, not just as a professional. Somebody who made your living in the industry, right? You were part of a professional Christian. And not just that person that made a shift, but the Bart person that made this shift, that becoming someone who had to reorient your life now in your thinking and your categories and your engagements and your way of viewing the world outside of a faith influenced tradition in a humanist tradition must have felt a lot like a conversion experience. And was it similar or not to how you've seen people have to sort of grow in their religious identity for someone to grow in their humanist or non-faith oriented identity? Or is it sort of like, I got that thing off my back and now I'm just free and doing what I want?
No, I mean, it wasn't, in a weird way, it wasn't either of those because I became a Christian when I was in high school. I joined a youth group. I was taken to this youth group. It was like this amazing, loving, wonderful group of people. And I wanted to be part of that community. And I didn't believe in God, but I wanted to be part of that community so much that I started to go through the motions. And eventually
hang on a minute. You grew up in a family with Peggy and
Tony Campolo.
Tony Campolo is your parents. And you didn't have a religious sensibility as a 5-year-old or 9-year-old or 12-year-old. For you didn't believe in God at the time. And when
it's funny, Doug, because like
came alive.
And you've probably had this experience sometimes in your own life where like you've told a story so many times that you're sick of the story.
Oh my gosh!
I'm like, yes. I'm so sick of my own story. Yeah. Like. I wrote it down in a book called, Why I Left, Why I Stayed, that I wrote with my dad. And my half is, this is how I grew up. This would happen. So like, it's not that I'm going to tell you the story, but like, if I seem a little like oh my gosh,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
why
You
isn't
don't even have. You can just sort of.
But the short
thumbnail
version of
it.
the story is that I wasn't a rebellious kid, and I loved my parents, and I knew that my dad in particular was a really sincere Christian. He believed his stuff.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, right.
And so I didn't go around like wearing, like screaming out loud, I don't believe in God. I'm against all this stuff. I went to the Sunday school. I went along with my dad. I loved to go hear him preach. He was fun to listen to. The stories just made no sense to me. Like the idea that like Noah's Ark actually happened just seemed really implausible. Jesus rising from the dead, like people don't rise from the dead.
Yeah.
Like it never made sense to me.
Yeah.
But when I went to this youth group, I saw these young people loving each other, and that was so attractive to me that I was like, let me try to find my way into this. Yeah. And then, you're up on a retreat, everybody's singing, I love you, Lord, and waving their hands, and, the candlelight's going, and like you have a transcendent moment.
Mm-hmm. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to make sense out of that and see if.
And you're in the Christian narrative, so you go like, "This is God." Like if I had a transcendent moment in Yosemite with a bunch of Buddhists, I'd be thinking like that was the way. Right. If I had been in Afghanistan with a bunch of Muslims, I'd have been like Allah. Yeah. Like I was with Christians when it happened. And, and my secular friends say like, oh, transcendent experiences, that's bullshit. And I go like, you got to be kidding. Like if you don't believe in transcendent experiences, you haven't been to the right rock concert.
Yeah. If you don't believe in that, why are you having sex if you don't believe in transcendent experiences, right?
If you don't believe in an experience that makes you feel one with another person, you probably haven't had sex with the right partner.
Yeah. So here's what I find interesting about that. I want to just ask if you would say this is true, because it's been true for me. I had a conversion experience similar to high school. I have been trying... a lot of my adult spirituality has been trying to get back to that moment of that conversion experience. And a lot of my Christian life in the last, I don't know, it's been 35 years since then, has tried to drive that, the experience I had.
Get back to that new, that vitality.
It's been trying to drive that out. So I find it interesting that you kind of got into Christianity in a Christian environment where like, I don't really buy all this. And now as somebody in your late 30s, or maybe a little older than that, somebody in your 50s is now saying, yeah, I don't really buy all that. You've gone back to like, do you see what I'm saying? Like the one way is there's a conversion, but the other way of thinking about this is in the Bart story is you were on a journey for a while in the Christian space, and you realized, I'm getting off this path. Like I'm getting in the water. I'm going to stop walking this path now, and I'm going to get on this other one. And it might feel more like it felt when you were. But
again, like you make it sound like it was all this like I was thinking. Here's what happens is I go to this youth group. I love this community. I want to be part of it. I open myself to it, and I have this experience, right? And then I'm surrounded by people who affirm it, who said, this is your identity. Like, and I loved the missional quality of it. I loved, we were making the world a better place. We were helping poor people. We were reaching out to kids in our high school who didn't have friends. Like being a Christian worked for me. I mean, that's why I spent 30 years trying to stay one. Like people who act like I walked away lightly, man, I held on. My theology changed 87 times, and it was always me trying to find a way to stay in the game. But people say like, when did you decide to leave? First of all, I didn't decide. Yeah. And secondly, my Christian faith died the death of 1,000 cuts over. Like you say, when did it start to go bad for you? I go like 5 minutes after I became a Christian.
Okay, so you have this moment where you can say, I became a Christian at some point.
Yeah, I accept. Yeah,
right, and I do too.
It made sense to me. Yeah, it made sense to me.
It's like when someone says, "So when did you and Shelley, my wife, when did you and Shelley get married?" Like, well, I know what you're getting at, and it was July 23rd at 3 p.m.
Yeah, I was in a McDonald's restaurant with Joel Draglin when I received Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior.
When did you take the? When's the comparable moment that you said, I will be comfortable having Humanist on a banner above my head on a website or a live stream or something? When did that get to the point where you said, okay, I'm having this experience, these things, but I now need to see myself in the social construct of the world, and I'm no longer going to see myself with angsty Christian or progressive evangelical. I'm going to see myself with humanist.
I can't even hang with Rob Bell anymore. Yeah. No. You know,
Was that your litmus test?
Here's the thing, like, you know, I'm a Christian for 6 months, and I go to work in Camden, New Jersey at an inner city day camp. And I see this kind of ridiculous poverty and this incredible injustice. And, you know, I'm still a believer who thinks that God like changes the weather for your wedding, that God gives you traveling mercies, that God actually intervenes in miraculous ways. And I'm seeing this and I'm going like, you know what? Either God is a bastard, evil, horrible person, or he's not in control the way I thought he was. And I shifted my theology to match the reality I saw around me. Later, I go to college. I have all these gay friends. The Bible says gay people are not in the will of God, but like these people, like they're really loving and kind and they're gay from birth. And, you know, and I shift again. Okay. And so I kept shifting and shifting, and I kept dialing down the supernaturalism.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
So finally, you know, I mean, if you heard me preach in the last 5 or 10 years of my Christian journey, you weren't hearing me say like God will solve all your problems.
That's right. That's right.
You know, miracles were very scarce in my part of the world. I mean, you know, and they still are. Like where I was working, you know, miracles happen precisely as often as they would happen if there was no God. Like stuff happens, crazy, improbable, wonderful things happen once in a while, but like that's just math. So what happens is that about 7 years ago, I get in a bike crash. I go out on my bike. I remember leaving the house. I remember waking up in the hospital. I go off the road at like 40 miles an hour, go headfirst into a tree. My helmet saves my life, but I'm badly concussed. And I can't think straight for a month. I just cry and sleep and don't remember things. And I am really messed up. And then I slowly regain my faculties. And when I come out of it, I'm sitting talking to my wife, and I go like, you know, babe, I'm pretty sure this life is the only one we get. Like it's really clear to me now, like I'm going to die. I almost died. I'm going to die. And it's also really clear to me that my whole personality is in my brain. Because like if you smash this thing against a tree, I change.
That's right.
So when I die and this thing breaks down, I'm not going to exist anymore. And like, even though I hadn't been supernatural for a long time, but like I had never really put a fine point on it. And she said to me, yeah, I think the same thing. She said, I think you got to stop being a professional Christian because there's nothing.
So Bart, I love this so much. And I am so intrigued because for me, that's a different reality. And I was knocked off a different horse. Right.
Yeah.
But all those things, I feel like that is what has that's the only thing that's kept me in my Christian spirituality and Christianity. Like that's what I find so intriguing, right? Is that those, that didn't take me out. My realization that God is not a single separate subject, that we don't talk about God as if God's existing in one reality and breaking the rules in human space, and that we have this one life and it's indistinguishable from the past and the history only as far as human consciousness. Like all that is... I mean, maybe I swallowed a different pill, but I'm like, that's the stuff that makes all Jesus's teachings and the kind of spirituality of Jesus make any sense at all. Is that sort of thing, and so I wonder, like, I'm not I have no agenda at all to try to make you like not a real humanist, or like I cannot stand when my friends are like, my brother-in-law says he's an atheist, but really deep down he's not, and I'm going to help him realize that. Like, I think that's really offensive. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just curious as to why that led you to the category, because there is a very firm category of humanist atheist, and there's a very firm category of Christian, and then there's lots of space in between. And you functioning, as, and I think it's a really important role, and I want to affirm that it should happen all over, as a humanist chaplain at universities for college students, just like there would be Muslim chaplains or Jewish chaplains or Christian chaplains. you moved into that other category, like full on into the category, not into this space between. And that's, do you see what I'm getting at? That's what roots that question.
Because what happened next answers your question.
Are you suggesting if I let you finish the story, the answer will be there? Because that ruins this whole podcast.
The whole process.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, I'm sitting there and I'm talking to my wife. She says, yeah, you shouldn't be a Christian anymore. Like, you're not a Christian anymore. Mm-hmm. Because the kind of Christianity we came from, it was all about like you actually believed in God. Mm-hmm. And she's like, you don't believe in a personal God. You don't believe Jesus rose from the dead. You don't believe that there's a heaven or a hell. You think this life is all that there is. She's like, I'm with you on that. But she said, like, if, you're not a Christian the way we call Christians. Now, the truth is, you could get John Shelby Spong or Marcus Borg. They don't believe any of that stuff either. And my father said to me later, he's like, why couldn't you just be one of those? Like one of those Christians who doesn't actually believe any of it. That it's just a language that when you say God, you mean universe. When you say Jesus, you mean a general idea of redemption. Why couldn't you be that? And the answer is really simple is that as soon as I realized I was done with it, the next thing my wife says to me, I said, okay, so yeah, we're done. She says, I got a question for you. She said, do you want to stay married? I was like, what do you mean? Yeah. She's like, because we don't have to. I mean, if there's no God, there's no rules. Like with the promises that we made before. She's like, and I was like, I want to stay married. I like being married. She's good. I want to stay married too. I was just checking. Then she goes like, do you still love our kids? And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course I love our kids. She said, well, she said, do you still want to help poor people and fight for justice and build community for people that are lonely? And I was like, yeah. She was messing with me. What she was basically saying is, you see, you haven't changed at all. You thought that those values were connected to your belief in God, but they're not. They're just who you are. As a matter of fact, it was those values that brought you into Christianity. What appealed to you about Christianity was you were a nice person who wanted to love people. And that seemed like the place to do it. That seemed like the club for nice people. Mm. She's like, you're the same guy. And anybody that knows me, you know me. Yeah. And they say to me like, it was like coming out gay. Most of my friends are like, oh yeah, we knew you didn't believe in God. We were wondering when you would figure it out. Yeah. And so what happened is when I came out of it, the first thought I had, Doug, was, okay, now what does it mean to build community and to reach out to people in love and to try to transform people's lives in a positive way as a secularist? And I looked around and I realized that there were so many people out there that the God language was off. I mean, I'd always known that as a Christian. There were people that would never come into our stuff. The God language, that imagery, that crazy, bizarre notion of original sin, like that you are worthy of damnation unless we help you. Yeah. Like all of that was an impediment to building the kind of communities that, I was willing to go through it because it was the only option I had. But I thought, you know what? I should go build community and speak inspiring words and try to motivate people to make the most of their lives for whom that language makes no sense. So the reason I'm not one of those John Shelby Spong Christians is it would confuse the people who I feel most motivated to care for.
Yeah. See, okay, so this is where
wait. I got to tell you something. Your technical difficulties are not my problem. And they delayed us getting started, but I've got a guy who's coming.
And now you got to go. I love it.
And so I'm going to have to go. Now, the good news is, if I understand right, you want to do this regularly, right?
Yes.
So we don't have to wrap this conversation up completely.
Right. Yeah. So thanks for that. Okay. So here's the deal, folks. What Bart was referring to there was, I had some technical difficulties in my new setup in the Peacedale Studios. We did an upgrade in 2018 and I had a little monitor trouble, but, so we started late. And we're going to do my podcast and live stream is going to have a weekly installment with Humanists. Bart's going to be part of that, some other people. We want to keep this conversation going, partly because I think it's really important. Well, first of all, I think there's the kind of spirituality and Christianity that I hold to, I think would benefit greatly from conversation partners that hold very similar approaches to the world without the Christian subtext and language. I think it's really important. But even more broadly, I think humanists really have a contribution to make to the world. And a lot of Christian people or people that might pay attention to my stream of life, don't have enough opportunities to be in conversations with humanists and atheists that don't start to feel overly personal to them, where they don't feel like, because if you're talking to a family member or somebody in your close social quarters, it can feel like they're trying to convince you or you're trying to convince them. Like, you're just not good at it. So having proxy
overhearing a conversation, they can overhear a conversation.
That's right.
And you know, the thing is, like, even when you say the word humanist, I don't even know what your people think that means.
Well, like the internets are buzzing now with people asking this one question. Maybe you just give us this before whoever's coming to your house to do whatever.
And so we can talk about that. You know, we can talk about that. But like
what a humanist is, and an atheist and a non-theist and an anti-theist.
All I can tell you is when I was the humanist chaplain at USC, being a humanist meant that you were a person that wanted to build loving relationships and make the world better for other people and cultivate a sense of gratitude and wonder at just the amazing, improbable reality of human consciousness, but didn't believe in God and had dinner with Bart and his friends on Sunday night. And I say the last part because what happened is that humanism in that context was defined by the people who claimed it and said like this, and they were the most loving, wonderful group of students. All the Christian, they weren't anti-Christian at all. The Christian kids loved them. They showed up at all the rallies to fight against injustice. They were wonderful kids. They are wonderful kids. And humanism got defined as, you're intentionally pursuing goodness in a secular way. And so that's not we can talk more about that, but it's great. Like most people don't know anybody. They know people who don't believe in God, but they don't know anybody who is openly and actively and passionately pursuing goodness in a secular way. Not because they hate God, they just can't believe in God. It's not possible for me to believe in God at this point in my life. So, but I got a huge hunger and love for goodness.
That's great. That's great.
So I got to go.
Yeah, I appreciate this a lot. Thanks for being part of this.
You can talk about me when I'm gone, but I got to go.
When I'm gone. We won't talk about you when you're gone. We'll talk with you in a week or so, or two, or three. All right. Hey, buddy. Thanks so much.
Hey, and just so people in your podcast know, like when we say that we are friends, like sometimes, in this professional world of people who talk on microphones, people call everybody their friend.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to know that they actually are overhearing a conversation with people who have hugged each other.
That's right.
Who have eaten food together, who really do care about what happens to each other. Because I think it's going to make it you'll talk to other people that maybe are people that you know.
Yeah.
Or acquaintances with. But I think it's important for people to know that you're actually talking to somebody who actually does love who you are.
Yeah. Well, thank you, buddy.
All right, baby. I love you.
Right,
I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Hey, how about that, everybody? Thanks, Bart. See ya.
See ya.
All right. So there we are. A little conversation with Bart Campolo. Real treat. I really do like that guy, and I think there's a lot of value here. Thanks for being part of the podcast. It's a real treat to have you also, not just to talk to these people I talk to on the podcast, but to have you be part of it. I really appreciate that. Thanks for being part of the Now We're Talking with Doug Pagitt podcast and those on the live stream and all the rest of it. So thanks for being part of it. If you want to be a patron, go to DougPagitt.com. You'll see the link there. You can chip in and become part of the effort that makes all of this goodness happen. So, again, hey, by the way, we're going to start rolling this podcast out on a much more regular frequency, pushing hard somewhere in March or so. I think we're going to be to a daily podcast with a different theme each day. So keep your feed open for that.